Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vallabha Vasudevaya Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Nainam Namaskritya Nityam Saraswatyam Vyasam Devyam Saraswatyam Vyasam Tojam Giraya Nastipeshu Bhadreshu Sevaya Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Shloke Bhagavati Shloke Naishtiki Bhagavati Naishtiki. We're reading from Angela chapter 17, verse text 14. So we're reading verses 14 to 33. Do you want to chant in the Sanskrit or just either way we can translate? We can read the first Sanskrit and then we read the other verses. Yeah. Ashramo Jaganato
Grihashramo Jaganato
Charyam Kritumama
Brahmacharyam Yudhamama
Akshasthalad Vanevasa
Vakshasala Vanevasa
Sannyasa Shirasi Sthita
Sannyasa Shirasi Sata
Grihashramo Jaganato
Grihashramo Jaganato
Brahmacharyam Hito Mama
Brahmacharyam Yudhamama
Akshasthalad Vanevasa
Vakshasala Vanevasa
Sannyasa Shirasi Sthita
Sannyasa Shirasi Sata
Grihashramo Jaganato
Grihashramo Jaganato
Brahmacharyam Hito Mama
Brahmacharyam Yudhamama
Akshasthalad Vanevasa
Vakshasala Vanevasa
Sannyasa Shirasi Sthita
Sannyasa Shirasi Sata
Ashramo Jaganato
Grihashramo Jaganato
Charya Mama
Brahmacharyam Yudhamama
Stala
Vakshasala Vanevasa
Sansa Shirasi Stita
Sannyasa Shirasi Sata
Ashrama Jaganato
Grihashramo Jaganato
Charyam Mama
Brahmacharyam Yudhamama
Sthaladvanevasaha
Vakshasala Vanevasa
Nyasa Shirasi Sthita
Sannyasa Shirasi Sata
Ashrama Jaganato
Grihashramo Jaganato
Charyam Mama
Brahmacharyam Yudhamama
Salad Vanevasa
Vakshasala Vanevasa
Shirasi Sthita
Sannyasa Shirasi Sata
Ashrama Jaganato
Grihashramo Jaganato
Charyam Mama
Brahmacharyam Yudhamama Vakshasala Vanevasa
Shirasi Sthita
Sannyasa Shirasi Sata
Let's read the translation, please. We can take turns and we'll just read from script 14 to 33.
Oh.
33. So we'll just read the passage.
14.
The married order of life appeared from the loins of my universal form, and the celibate students came from my heart. The forest dwelling retired order of life appeared from my chest. The renounced order of life was situated within the head of my universal.
The various occupational and social divisions of human society appeared according to inferior and superior natures manifest in the situation of the individual's birth.
Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, cleanliness, satisfaction, tolerance, simple straightforwardness, devotion to me, mercy, and truthfulness are the natural qualities of brahmanas.
Dynamic power, bodily strength, determination, heroism, tolerance, generosity, great endeavor, steadiness, devotion to the Brahmanas, and leadership are the natural qualities of the Kshatriyas.
Faith in Vedic civilization, dedication to charity, freedom from hypocrisy, service to the Brahmanas, and perpetually desiring to accumulate more money are the natural qualities of the Vaishyas.
Service without duplicity to the Brahmanas, cows, demigods, and other worshipful personalities, and complete satisfaction with whatever income is obtained in such service are the natural qualities of Shudras.
Dirtiness, dishonesty, thievery, faithlessness, quarrel, lust, anger, and hankering
constitute the nature of those in the lowest position outside of Varnashrama.
Nonviolence, truthfulness, honesty, desire for the happiness and welfare of all others, and freedom from lust, anger, and greed constitute duties for all members of society.
The twice-born member of society achieves second birth through the sequence of purificatory ceremonies culminating in Gayatri initiation. Being summoned by the spiritual master, he should reside within the Guru's ashram and with a self-controlled mind carefully study the brahmachari should regularly melt straw and keep skin garments. Should wear matted hair, pray abroad, modify secret bed. Carrying pure kusha grass this day should never accept a luxurious or sensuous sitting. Should not unnecessarily polish his teeth, nor should he iron his
A brahmachari should always remain silent while bathing, eating, attending sacrificial performances, chanting japa, or passing school. He should not cut his nails and hair, including the armpit and hair.
When observing the vow of celibate brahmachari, life should never pass semen. If the semen by chance spills out by itself, brahmachari should immediately take bath in water. Control his breath by pranayama and chant the Gayatri mantra.
Purified beings in consciousness, the brahmachari should be inspired by the sun, which balance to other substances. Should perform something sunrise, sunset, without sleep, silent routine.
One should know the Acharya as myself, and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is the representative of all the entities.
morning people collect foodstuffs and other articles to the spiritual master. Then being self-controlled, one should accept for oneself that which is appointed charge. While engaged in serving the spiritual master, one should remain as a humble servant. And thus, when the Guru is walking, the servant should humbly walk behind. When the Guru lies down to sleep, the servant should also lie down nearby. When the Guru has awakened, the servant should sit near him, massaging his lotus feet, rendering other similar services. When the Guru is sitting down on his asana, the servant should stand nearby with folded hands, awaiting the Guru's order. In this way, one should always worship the spiritual master.
Until the student has completed his meditation, he should remain engaged in the ashrama of the spiritual master. Should remain completely free of material sense gratification, should not break his vow of service to brahmachari.
If the brahmachari student desires to ascend to the Brahmaloka or Brahmaloka planet, then he should completely surrender his activities to the spiritual master, and observing a powerful vow of perpetual celibacy, dedicate himself to superior Vedic studies. Thus, in light of complete knowledge, a service to the spiritual master, free from all sins and duality, one should worship me as his personal, as I appear within fire, the spiritual master, one's own self, and all living entities.
Those who are not married, sannyasis, vanaprasthas, and brahmacharis should never associate with women by glancing, touching, conversing, joking, or sporting. Neither should they ever associate with any living entity. Sexual
So, the focus of this chapter is going through the Varnashram system. And it's one of the loaded and complicated topic. There there are there's the famous statement by Srila Prabhupada towards the end of him completing his pastimes on this material world, where he said he has done kind of 50% of his work, and the rest 50% that's establishing Varnashrama is kind of his next or his next thing. So different devotees have kind of focused on different aspects of that statement. So what I would like to do today is just kind of share my few realizations and kind of my experiences, and then also talk about maybe kind of what's relevant for the group in here. So the word Varnashrama, right, is made by two words, the Varnas and the Ashrams. So there are 4 ashrams and then there are the 4 Varnas, right? So 4 ashrams are. So let's talk about the ashrams and then we'll so the brahmachari ashram, like kind of most of you are in right now, the focus is to live simply, have some austerity, to focus on one's spiritual life. Okay, the focus is to be able to serve the spiritual master, read scriptures, focus as much as possible to perform one's sadhana, and live like that, right? Because that establishes kind of the foundation for the next ashram. So once one starts doing that, it kind of builds that foundation to build that habit to be able to do that as you kind of go and step into different ashrams. So it's beautiful that there are facilities like Krishna House, right, where you can perform this in association, right? And there's the beauty to it, and it's really blissful to be able to do that with like-minded people. So anytime, for example, like if you want to work out, it's always easier to go to the gym because there are people working. If you want to study, it's usually easier to go to the library because people who are studying is quiet, right? So it's kind of makes that ambience, or where you're kind of seeing people who are doing things like that, so it kind of gets a little bit easier to be able to do that, right? So it's so it kind of becomes natural to be able to. So it's really important and beautiful that there are ashrams like Krishna House where devotees like yourself can come and be able to practice brahmachari or brahmacharinis to be able to focus on the spiritual life, take some austerity, be celibate. But it's harder. It's really hard to be able to do that, especially in the Western world when you are not kind of living that environment. And unfortunately, it may not be practical for everyone to be able to either be close to such a community or having kind of a working situation where they're able to do that. So in that sense, kind of trying to do that is hard. So Riyasa Ashram is really beautiful in that way because you have the 24/7 association. You have a partner that you're encouraging each other to focus on each other's spiritual life and help grow in each other's spiritual life. So I know some of you are already in that ashram and some of you transition into that ashram. So I think a few of the things that are helpful to kind of keep in mind when you think about transitioning into the ashram is one is to have the right mood or the right attitude whenever we are shifting. The right mood is always to grow in our spiritual life and being able to serve others. So now you are taking the responsibility, of that other person or other partner, okay, her life to help each other in each other's spiritual life. So going in with that attitude that I'm going in the ashram to serve the other person helps to be able to be happy and be sustainable in that ashram. So that's one. On terms of the practical side, second is I think really important is to during the time right now before you transition into ashram, kind of understanding a little bit of one's nature, right? And that we'll talk about more of that during the Varnas, and it's not an easy thing to understand at times, right? So there are tools that we can use. We can take guidance from other devotees, spiritual master, and so that way we can kind of understand what's nature. And I think once we kind of have a better understanding of who really we are, what is our nature, it kind of helps us to find the right partner for us. And so the focus should be to be able to understand one's nature, and then being able to ask the right question and focus on kind of the right things when you're trying to find your partner to get married to. So like, what is this that really I want to do in my life, and then how we can support each other, right? And if the kind of the focus is a little bit different, right, then that can probably create some friction, right? So if you can have those discussions early on under the guidance of like premarital counseling, that's really helpful. So that and not to kind of focus on kind of the physical aspect, but the spiritual aspect and focusing on the nature and the needs, and being able to have those conversations early on helps you to find the right partner and not have those frictions later on. And then, as I said earlier, like going in with the right attitude. So that always helps because we are in this material world. There will always be challenges, right? It will never be a smooth sailing, no matter which ashram you do. So just having that commitment, right, that I'm here to serve that person, and things will be challenging and hard at times. But as long as the focal point is that, right, you will, Krishna will empower, and with the mercy of Prabhupada and devotees, you will be able to sustain in that action. So then, and then within Grihastha ashram, there's the beauty of having children, and that really helps you in multiple goals to increase or grow your spiritual life even further. Right? One is kind of you have these souls that Krishna has really entrusted you with to be able to help them in their spiritual life. Right? So the bar of like sincerity or humility goes even higher, right? Because it's like I cannot I have this jiva, or I have this soul, or I have this little child who's literally observing me 24/7, and whatever I do is going to affect his or her life, right? And so, and the thing is, it's like the kids, their eyes are a lot bigger than their ears, right? So if you tell them to do certain things, but you do it a certain way, they'll follow what you're doing, not what you're saying. Right? That tends with even with with older, it's like, oh, like you said this, but that's not what you're doing, right? So, so it really helps one to practicing sincerely, be more dedicated, and start focusing on one's spiritual life even further. And it naturally helps in one's humility too. You're raising these beautiful souls, but then at certain times, it's like you may spend the whole day serving them in one way or the other, and then one little thing that he may or she may want is it's like that popsicle at the end of the day. It's like, dude, it's like your time to go to bed. It's like sugar is probably not the right idea for right now, and what you get in return is like, oh, I don't love you. It's like we talked about like all this day, like I've been like trying to make sure that you are kind of, my focus and my attention and doing all this and like, this is what I get in return. It's like, seriously? So it's, it's like, if Krishna, again, has this beautiful plan of Varnashram, which kind of helps us to build that humility. It's like, one, realizing how little control I have, on this little person that I should be able to just tell what to do. It's like, I cannot even control this, 2-year-old, let alone being able to control, and like talking about another person, I cannot even control my own mind. So really, it's like, I don't have any other option but to be humble. Sorry, if I really think about it, it's like I have so little control, and really, it's like Krishna is in charge, and so it's just my life will be more peaceful if I just try to surrender and be humble and just try to take Krishna's shelter in that. Right? So it's really beautiful, and then at the same time, it's like, the kids also, again, Krishna arranges everything so nicely, right? Like the souls that are coming in your life, like you need them and they need you, right? It's just like Krishna's arrangement. Really trying to surrender. So it's just such a beautiful thing. Like if I see in kind of my personal life, having kids, realize that I want to be able to be closer to a bigger, if you may, a spiritual community, right, where there are more devotees present, where the kids can get more association. And that's been such a nice and beautiful transition for Amrita Kelly and I. And so it's Krishna arranges things in a way that you're helping each other or you're helping one another, and you're spiritual growing in that way. And so once you kind of go through the Grihastha ashram, then again, like now you're in your later stages of life. The focus becomes really kind of focusing on your dedicating your life to your spiritual life and yourself. So then taking later on the partner for us. And then I think the key is to really have mutual respect for each other and the ashram, right? I think sometimes in earlier on, especially in our movement, I think there were some ashrams that may have been considered so-called higher or lower for your spiritual life, right? But I think the beauty is to really to be able to have mutual respect and again have that service attitude of serving one another. Right? So it's just like if Prabhupada gives this example so many times in his lectures with the example of the body, right? If the hand doesn't feed the mouth, and if the mouth is like, no, I'm just gonna stay in, like keep the food in, it's for me to enjoy, the stomach is not gonna digest, right? The body's not really going to work, right? So it's each unit in the body or each organ has specific function, right? So I think I was having this conversation with a devotee, and I think he put it really nicely. He said the brahmachari ashram is simple but austere, and Grihastha ashram is comfortable but complex. So again, there are quote unquote challenges or obstacles that we will have in each ashram, but again, the point of those ashrams is to help us to get closer to Krishna. And that's if we go on the first verse, right, that's the question by Uddhava, is like how these varnashrams help someone to get to come closer to. And that's the whole purpose of being in the following the varnashram system, to develop one's bhakti. So now I'm kind of going to the varnas side, right? So there are the 4 varnas, right? Anyone wants to run the 4 varnas? Right. So the 4 varnas that were so in the earlier ages, if you may, it was kind of easier because people really kind of knew which varnas they were in, right? And so it was really the society was kind of well divided, if you may, to where like if you grew in a Kshatriya family, you knew you were Kshatriya, and you kind of were brought up with that training and you took up to those qualities and build those qualities and perform in that as a Kshatriya. And similarly for Brahmin, kind of raising it that way. But in in this age, it's hard to really know one's worth, right? I mean, there are so many verses in purport, right? It's like it's basically we all are Shudras, we have those tendencies, right? So where do we kind of technically fall? Do we fall in Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudra? So I think there are a few practical things that I've kind of seen and learned from my own experience, right? So one is there are certain practical tools that can help in understanding one's nature. So like you have really researched things around this, right? There's like enneagrams, there's ikigais, or those kind of things that kind of help you kind of navigate a little bit of like what your nature is, like what kind of there's astrology, right? That can kind of help you a little bit understanding your nature. So like for the longest time, I did not want to do my astrology. I was like, it wouldn't help me because no matter what part of life I may be in, it's like I just serve the devotees, serve my spiritual master. Like that's not going to change, right? So like, what's the point of really knowing? And then when Rajarshi was born, or years later, we did his chart, and then we did Lila Kishore chart. And so I was like, well, actually, this is helpful because I understood kind of what Rajarshi's certain nature is. And I could, so for Rajarshi, we did it, I think he was 3 when we did it. And the astrologer pointed certain things. I was like, oh, actually, yes, I can see that. Right? And that helps me now to be able to serve him better because I kind of understand like what his natural tendencies are and help to navigate or make sure I'm kind of catering to those needs of those tendencies. So I was like, oh, actually, this is helpful. So maybe I should do this for myself too and kind of understand that. So then the astrologer that I was speaking to, so this was Lilamita was just born, and I think she was like 3 or 4 months, and so the astrologer asked like how my life was and how to prepare. I was like, it's going okay. And so then he mentioned, it's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. And so he's like, well, the thing is, your natural, it looks like you're kind of in not so good part per se, because your natural tendencies are you really like to be organized. So you like to have a routine. And then 2, this was hard for me to take because I thought I didn't do that. You like to be appreciated for what you do. Right? So those are like the 2 things. And now having a second child, parenting is anything but opposite of that. Right? Because 1, there's no routine. It's like you may have certain idea, but now the child wants something, and it just goes, all your plans go south, and you have to do that. And then second, like a 1-year-old or 2-year-old is not going to say, "Oh, thank you so much for serving me." Right? So it's totally opposite of your nature of what you're supposed to do. So I was like, oh, actually that makes sense. And then it's funny like how I cannot go on vacation for more than 2 or 3 days. And I was like, oh, now this makes sense because I don't have my schedule on my vacation. And I just go like, I just need to go back and, there's this thing that Amrita Kelly and I joke about because like I cannot take long vacations. So even on my vacations, I need to have a plan and I need to be organized and I need to know what's happening. Otherwise, I just go crazy. So it's in that way, astrology can help because then you're like, okay, these are kind of my nature, and then how I can make sure that I'm kind of serving myself or that my nature, or what would be the best way to be able to do that in kind of what service, what ashram to be able to make sure those tendencies are met, right? So the astrology can also be kind of that guiding tool in your bag, if you may, to help with that. The other is really building that relationship with your mentors and your spiritual master, because they really can guide you to how you can use that nature to serve Krishna. That's like one of the beautiful thing of having mentors, having senior devotees, is that they're able to help us to kind of navigate. And then the thing that I have learned and I've observed, and especially I think this is a lot in us millennials, is there's a tendency to make sure that what we're doing for our living is all encompassing and all fulfilling. There's so much thing in like my job should be what's giving me the satisfaction. So my job should be, either like if someone is really focused on, serving Krishna through talking about environmentalism, right? Making sure my job is related to environmentalism, right? Or no car, or like my job should be really focused, within the. I only want to serve the devotees, so it should be like somewhere within the where I'm only engaging with devotees, right? There can be so many things where our goal and focus becomes to make sure we find that profession, which is checking all the boxes. Otherwise, it's not the right profession. Right? I think that's a tendency that is a lot in millennials. But I mean, I can say from my personal experience, right? It's better and easier to understand kind of what your priority is, and making sure all those priorities being fulfilled through your profession, right? And as long as those top 2 or 3 priorities are being fulfilled, right, you're not going to find, most of the time, you're not going to find a career path or a profession that's going to check out. So, for example, like for my job, I do as a technical salesperson, right? There's nothing quote unquote bona fide or wonderful that it's like everyone should be focused on that career, right? I'm not getting any spiritual benefit, if you may, satisfaction or so, right? It's not like a direct thing that I can be like, hey, guess what? Today I work as a tech sales and it's gonna help in my Krishna consciousness. So, but the thing is that like for me, the beauty is it helps me to make enough money that I can provide for my family, to where our family, including myself, have enough flexibility to be able to live comfortably and have like a nice Krishna conscious life, and to be able to raise our kids that way, which is again that's the first priority, right? To be able to for me, right? And again, that's the thing of like understanding what your priority. My priority, first one is to be able to make sure that I can have my family be in a comfortable situation where they can practice it. It's not so they don't have to, especially for my kids, right? Like they can go to the Gurukul, so it's not like really they don't have to kind of live austere, they don't have to kind of into austere. So that's the one. The second is no matter where you are, you can practice in certain subtle ways still, right? So for example, I have this coworker, and we've been like, again, I'm not really like I try to keep. I'm really what's the word, like introvert, so I try to keep my personal life to myself. Like I don't really talk about like my personal life so much, especially with my coworkers. So, but it's just like people notice and see your nature, and people are attracted to. They want to be closer to, spend more time with nice people, spend more time with like-minded people. And so this coworker was like, oh yeah, I hear you talking about like you doing kirtans or going to Sunday temple. I'm kind of interested about your spiritual life. I'm atheist, but I'm just curious because I think like I like kind of your lifestyle. I like how you do things, and I'm kind of you somehow I can see like your spiritual life is like your focus. And so I want to kind of learn more, right? So again, it's so you can always quote unquote preach in several ways, right? Like I don't have to go to my office and make sure every coworker takes Bhagavad Gita the next day, right? Like that's not going to benefit anyone. But there are Krishna will if that's the attitude, like Krishna will if that's really what heart is and that's what really we want, like Krishna will create arrangements for that, right? And then the third thing is like there will be arrangements and satisfaction of outside of that workshop, right? So like I don't if my focus is spiritual life, if I like to share Krishna consciousness with other people, I don't really have to do that within my work life, right? As long as it's providing enough means to be able for me to be able to do that in my spare time and make sure that I have enough spare time to do that, then that's the right job, right? As long as I'm getting that flexibility to where I can stay in the devotee community, I can practice my spiritual life, I can provide for my family, right? As long as those things are happening, I don't have to look for those satisfaction within my job, which I see tends to happen a lot with millennials, to trying to make sure that satisfaction is coming from your job. Right? It doesn't have to come from your profession, and actually, in my humble opinion, it's a lot easier to have those outside of your vocation, as long and making sure that you don't get occupied, that your vocation or your profession is taking kind of all your energy. So if you kind of focus with that way, trying to take those understand one's nature by taking guidance from other senior devotees, spiritual masters, trying to look at some of the tools that are out there, trying to take astrology from that lens, or use astrology from that lens, and then making sure that like your vocation is kind of part of it and not will be all encompassing. Then that can help you understand, right? And then certain times it's just certain what your nature may be, right? Is not the service that may be coming may not really be aligned to your nature, right? So if I have to be father right now and it's not aligning with my nature of being organized and being appreciated, like what am I going to do? Like Krishna, I'm not going to take the service. Like I'm not ready. Like I need another service. Like until you find another father for these children. It's not my nature, right? Or is like actually I'm put in this service for a reason, right? And there is something for me to learn and grow. Like Krishna helped me to surrender and really be able to serve these souls and see like what I'm supposed to learn from this experience and how actually I can help keep them in their Krishna consciousness, right? So that like having that trying to build that humility and being able to surrender really helps to be able to navigate through that. And then wherever is the need is where the most mercy comes, right? So it's like I may have certain service in my mind, but if that's not really where the need is right now, but the need is somewhere else, if I just try to surrender and do that service in the best ability that I can, that's really where the mercy is, because that's Krishna is reciprocating with our sincerity. And so if I'm trying to be sincere and just like see that's where the need is, Krishna will reciprocate. And again, we'll be able to learn from that service to be in where really where our nature is, right? But there is a lot of growth lessons, things that we learn to be able to even probably perform that service better, right? You think like, oh, like this is my service, I should be able to do that. But there are things that like actually when that service happens, you can see like why Krishna put you in certain situations or whatever. Right? In the time, in the moment, it's not really clear. But once you're there, right, and you kind of look at like in hindsight, you're like, okay, this is why this happened. This is why Krishna put me in this spot. And now actually I can use that experience and I can perform this service better. Right? And I'm sure a lot of us, or probably all of us, have had some of those experiences in our life. So just kind of always trying to remember those experiences, because at times it may get hard. Like, this is not really what I want to do, Krishna. Like, why you're putting me in the service? Like, I'm not meant for it. And again, and that's really where the guidance of senior devotees and mentors comes in. Because I'm not saying like if it's impacting our, because at the end of the day, the principle is take whatever is helpful for your spiritual life, and reject whatever is not helpful for your spiritual life. So if that service is really kind of pushing you away from Krishna, then it's not. If I'm in part of my life where I'm actually it's bringing anger or frustration to where I just like don't want to do that service, and it's coming out to where I'm lashing out at other devotees and I'm not being able to serve nicely, then there's at that point then I just need to step away from that service because it's not helping me. Right. So that's really where the senior devotees and spiritual mentors come in. But again, the idea is to try to do it at least for some time, see if it's something that we can do. Krishna has his plan. That's really the best plan for us, and being able to serve that way. So, any comments or questions from you?
Hare Krishna. A reflection and a question, probably the question. I appreciate your point and pointing out that our career isn't meant to be a source of fulfillment. Usually that's what we're told in society, especially growing up. Do what you love, do what you're passionate about. But in Krishna consciousness, the priority is a little different. We already know what's so fulfilling. I'm reminded of a dear friend of mine. When he was exiting college, he kind of entered Grahastha ashram right away. Partner in college, he got married, and he got work as an IT professional, software engineer. And now he's, I think, 30 or 31, something like that. Has 3 kids, and they have a big house, and very nicely established. And so now many of his friends who actually went to Brahmacharya ashram for a few years, now they're coming to Grahastha ashram to go to him for guidance and help. How do I do this? And when I was speaking with him, he said that he observes the same phenomenon a lot. There's this idea, especially after kind of being immersed in spiritual life for many years, you come out, it's like, okay, how do I stay Krishna conscious? How do I stay immersed in the mission? And his comment on that was, under your work, you should just understand what your nature is. Do something that's stimulating for you, that matches your nature, and always understand that your fulfillment, your family, your community, that's what the devotees. That's when you're going to the temple. That's when you're going to festivals. Work, just find something that's somewhat satisfying, skills, and then there. And another dear friend of mine, who many people know, he was in Krishna House for a time. Right now, he's working full time as a chaplain at a hospital, and I've had interesting conversations with him before our career as well. He says that there's no more spiritual job than that. He's getting paid to offer spiritual insight and support to people in need. I mean, what more can you want? But he says even in his work, there are still those days, complaints or disagreements. His co-working chaplains might have some different ways of doing things. Or why is my management telling me this? Or why do I have to work this late night on John Bus? I think things come up. So it's very interesting. Look at this and you think, wow, the chaplain also has perfect emotional work. But even there, it's the full fulfillment is only in Krishna consciousness when we're with the devotees. So I was appreciating that when thinking of this conversation. So I was just thinking, we mentioned this in the class yesterday briefly as well. But why are we focusing on Varnashrama? Come across certain purports even or talks by Prabhupada where he says that we're above. Yesterday in one of the purports he mentioned that for one is transcendently engaged, they're above the Varnashrama system. And today in one of the verses it says that the brahmacharya, why is he doing all these things? So he can achieve Brahmaloka. So it's karma kind of. It's just following a certain system of regulated life so that you can enjoy the fruits of your labor, basically. So why did Prabhupada say that so much of his work is done, and why is that such a big focus? I think the answer to that can also be found in one of the verses we read today, in text 21. It says that non-violence, truthfulness, honesty, desire for the happiness and welfare of all others, and freedom from lust, anger, and greed constitute duties for all members of society. So, freedom from lust, anger, that's quite a high platform. So, Varnashrama Dharma is what helps you to come to the human platform. You can't really go into transcendence properly on a human platform. And an important thing is that Varnashrama system acts as a safety net. Because yeah, we're trying to engage transcendentally, but how many people can go years and years, decades and decades without ever hitting a dip? And maybe sometimes we lose some inspiration. So Varnashrama Dharma creates a certain environment. If you're living here in a city and you hit your dip, there's a whole lot of sin going on. There's ugra karma, very fierce karma that this whole society is like driven by. So when you slip, you can get pulled quite far. But if we're living in a Varnashrama society, like let's say you're a devotee, and there's like farm community after farm community after farm community, it's miles and miles around. So when you hit a dip, okay, let's go for a stroll. Let's hang out with the cows. And it's not, you can't, not going to pull that far. Varnashrama society just helps everyone stay on the human path.
Thank you. I like how you brought up the point of how speaking from your own experience of how your kids can help you become really Krishna conscious. I had a similar experience that it's like you want them to be devotees, and that's like your main objective of raising kids, are get souls back to God. So, and you know how much your example affects their development. So it's like I have to model a pure devotee, and it really forces me to step up. So that's me too. I'd also like to put a little plug for Manakasta Ashram. It's a really good ashram. Because like after your kids have grown up, then you know your financial needs are less. You've gone through like a lot of purification in Grihastha Ashram. So you know you're mature in age, you're mature in wisdom. You've assimilated a lot of conscious philosophy over this experience, and so you're in a really good position to go back into time, sharing that with others, spreading Srila Prabhupada's mission. It's just a really great position. So the brahmacharya and the grihastha, they're all like great ashrams for learning, for purification, for interacting with the world in a broad range, especially grihastha, a broad spectrum of engagements. And then after you've kind of like been there, done that, it's good to refocus, recalibrate, get back to like full-time devotional service, so yeah, it's nice, like it's you never get stuck in consciousness. It's never like, okay, whatever, it's always, it's very progressive. The Varnashrama system is very progressive and it keeps, you go through it properly,
try to surrender to it. It just moves you along. And Prabhupada said stepping stones. The Varnashrama system is stepping stones to spiritual understanding. So we don't want to stay on any one stone. We want to just keep moving through it. It's where.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean that's that's such a beauty of Krishna consciousness because it's like, like I get so ecstatic like thinking of like, being in Varnashram or ashram or something. It's like, oh, like I will have time where I can just focus like 24/7, like being able to do my sadhana, and it's like but how many people in this material can really be like they're actually looking forward to being older, right? It's like the material world is totally opposite. It's like, oh, I want to stay young, is this whole thing, but it's like in Krishna consciousness you can actually not only appreciate that progression, if you know, but actually look forward to it, right? Because it's like, oh, like I'll have this time and like I can be able to use all the things that I've learned and be able to share with others. So that's really the beauty of Varnashram, and that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. It's just like you see why it's been that way rather than trying to fight it, kind of what you see in the material world happening, right? Just trying to stay young, and that's kind of somehow the. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. My question is, we hear often that it's very difficult to make progress in Grihastha ashram, and progress in Grihastha ashram is very slow, and I hear this all the time, like it's just very slow, like your spiritual progress, like, and it's kind of like, why even go into that? Why waste the time? But from what you guys are saying, it sounds like it's not. You have so many opportunities for surrender and purification and self-sacrifice. So how do we bring those two conclusions to meet? Maybe you can share also one of those who's in Bonaparte now. So the answer to that.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm curious where you heard that. Who said that? So the each ashram. So first of all, I think no matter which ashram you're in, the spiritual progress will be slow, right? It's not like overnight. It's not like I'm not gonna keep walking. If that's the idea, and if that's the motive, right? I'm taking it further, right? So I mean, if you just see things in material world, like certain status of people who have trying to make certain accomplishment, like they have to work so hard, and here they're trying to receive the highest thing. So it's not just going to happen overnight. It's a gradual process, right? So no matter which ashram you may be in, it will be a gradual process. Right? So it's not like if you are in Brahmachari ashram or sannyas ashram or ashram, it's going to be like, hey, I go from like oh, it was slow from Grihastha ashram. So it was slow in Grihastha ashram, and then I go in one person, the light bulb just turns on and everything. I'm all like, I get killed off, right? So it's not like that, right? So that's one piece of it, and then the second is again like we're having that mutual respect, right? So if like to understand that again each ashram has its purpose, right? And from my experience in being in Grihastha ashram for last decade or so, it's been it really helps you build that humility. And it's really nice in the way, especially in the Western world, right? Like right now, we are in a place like we have a bigger devotee community and we have that. But when we were in Jacksonville and there wasn't that big of a community, the Grihastha ashram helps you kind of cultivate that mood in your home, right? So when I came from work, I could just come home and see the deities, have the temple altar in our house, do some kirtans. It's just you can build that oasis, right? And like there's this whole desert outside, but when you come home, there's that oasis, right? And then it's even Krishna was so kind that we had some opportunity to be able to share Krishna consciousness with certain certain devotees or certain students at the time, and that made it even more blissful, right? Because now there was like a bigger quote unquote community, right? So it gives you kind of those to help you to create that oasis that you can always kind of shelter, right? And help each other. It's and again, it's as Prabhu was sharing earlier, like we will have our dips, right? And so when you're struggling in your spiritual life, or you may have certain doubts, like your partner can probably, help you out and vice versa, right? Or you both can kind of have this humility, like we both are struggling right now, like we need to get some help, right? To make sure that we can sustain this, right? So that way it's just really good that way. And the last point I'll make is this really being true to yourself, right? Let's say that comment is even true, right? Like the Grihastha ashram is slow and you don't make that much progress. Again, like let's just say for a second, like that's a true comment. But if I'm being true to myself, like that's where I really want to be, right? And if the progress is a lot faster in taking sannyas and I just say like, hey, I'm gonna leave my kids and family and I'm taking sannyas, I'm not being true to myself. So I'm not going to make spiritual progress, right? The spiritual progress is going to come in when I'm really true to myself. I'm taking the guidance. And we have seen this, right? Like we have seen this in our movement earlier, right? Right after Prabhupada left, there was that immaturity, if you may, right? Like, hey, like certain ashrams are meant for quicker spiritual progress, and people step into that ashram without having that maturity, and we're not able to sustain it, right? So it's what you do is if I'm going from like here to New York, when I hit like like Washington DC or New York City, there'll be times there'll be traffic, right? And so if it's a traffic, I'm not going to go like 50 miles an hour, right? I'm probably going to just go 10 miles an hour. And so there'll be like slow progressions towards getting to New York. But as long as I'm on that path, and two, realizing that if actually I try to go as a 50 miles per hour right now, I'm probably going to get into an accident, right? So right now, the situation I'm in, the best thing I can do is just make sure I'm making some progress and going 10 miles an hour. And then, when that traffic opens up, I can speed up again. And, it's just going to happen in our life. Like, there'll be times that there'll be quote unquote traffic jam, but as long as I can just kind of push and sustain and realize that, and once that traffic opens and all this, but have that in our always have that desire, right? That I really want to be able to do this more when the opportunity comes. And then when Krishna arranges that, it just take it and take that opportunity. And then again, like that will happen in waves and it will happen. I don't know if you have anything you want to share.
We're out of
Okay.
Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Sarvapanya Brahmacharya Swasunai Vajaya. Faith and spiritual in the day of Shiva, in transcendental Krishna and